Welcome back to Tiempo. We've been talking this morning about our recent trip to Cuba. We have been joined here by John Gutierrez, professor from John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and Vito, columnist for the Cuba Standard publication. Aside from the economic woes and the governor's trip, in talking to some of the people there and their hope for renewed economic input from the United States, there are certain aspects of Cuban life, the Cuban system, quote unquote, that they want to retain, that they're very proud of. And what kept coming up over and over was, we love having free health care. And we look at the healthcare troubles that this country has experienced. We love that education is free. Right. And I can tell you, just about every conversation I had with somebody, they were perfectly literate. Is there anything that we can learn from that? Is there anything that we can pull from that? Here they are, them looking at us to try and get something. Is there anything that we can say, wow, at least in the realm of healthcare, at least in the realm of literacy, we can look to Cuba for something, or are we stretching it too far?
You want to take that?
I was going to say one of the high points of the system in Cuba is education, especially what's happening with biotechnology. Okay. The situation with Andrew Cuomo, for example, his trip to Cuba, one of the executives that came along with him was somebody from Pfizer. And I took note of that right away. So, biotechnology is being taken seriously, not just within Cuba, but around the world. I mean, the physicians from different countries, even the United States, that have visited Cuba to take notes and learn what's been happening. There's a drug, for example, called P, which is being used to treat diabetic ulcers. And that's being used in different countries such as Brazil. Mm-hmm. And I was imagining that in the near future, if and when things get better between the two countries, that particular medicine will be taken a serious look at by the medical profession here. All right.
The reason I saw you cringing, the reason I phrased it in that way was because they don't want to become Americanized. They like that they're Cuban, and there's parts of my life, but they don't want Starbucks and McDonald's and Marriott hotels there tomorrow.
Well, how do we know this, right? Like, I think I always worry about this, about Americans sort of knocking the exportation of American capitalism to other parts of the world. I think some people, we take for granted that we can go into a Starbucks and we can order a, I don't know, quadruple macchiato, but I don't even know what you would order. But we take for granted that we can do that.
Right.
Let Cubans decide, right, whether or not they want that there. I think
that's a good point.
We need to...
I think the government will decide, not the Cubans.
Right, and I think that's an incredibly important point, that throughout this entire, and I thought your interviews were great, but it's fascinating to hear Cubans talk about the entire process taking place between the government, and they have no say in whether or not what the nature of this rapprochement is going to be. And I think that's problematic.
Well, I was going to say that people living in Cuba, their point of reference is their relatives here in the United States. It's not simply with neighboring Latin countries. So when they decide whether they want a McDonald's or Burger King, what have you in the future, their point of reference, once again, is with the people back home. So that's what I was saying in terms of all that. One of the problems is that many of the Americans that have been going to Cuba over the years, they're imposing this opinion against the idea of a McDonald's in every corner of Havana and that sort of thing.
All right, let me throw out to you then the opinions of an innocent third party. Okay. Europeans travel to Cuba frequently. They're big tourists.
And Canadians too.
And Canadians too. In fact, Canadians more so recently, now that the talks between the U.S. and Cuba, and the thinking tends to be this: I want to go see the place before the Americans ruin it.
Yep. Right.
Any validity to that?
Well, here's the thing. It would be, I think it'd be fascinating to ask the Cuban people whether or not they think that it is enough to grow their economy to depend on tourists from Europe and Canada. If they don't want additional tourists, they can say no. But the fact of the matter is they do want them. Why? Because they are coming with American dollars.
They're the economic engine right now.
Correct.
Tourism is still creating jobs, it's creating opportunities. Tourism is what's creating a spin-off, if you will, of the so-called cuenta propistas, those individuals just selling things off the street, and also in particular individuals operating restaurants, because who's going to go to restaurants? Who can afford to go to restaurants to begin with? The tourists.
Okay. Sit tight, gents. When we come back, we've got our final thoughts on what is next in Cuba. A lot to talk about. We've covered a lot of ground, but we'll wrap it up when we come back on Tiempo.